Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farooq Pitafi. These days we are focusing more on Kashmir's situation because it is important. Not only it is a matter of a nuclear flashpoint, but it also talks about the mistreatment of humans living in Kashmir, especially when you look at the total number, it goes in millions of people who still are incarcerated within their own homes. And while it is going on, India keeps on heating up the line of control, the temporary ceasefire line between Indian occupied Kashmir and Azad Kashmir, the part that Pakistan has. India doesn't seem to have a kind of reset that we were expecting. It was thought that perhaps after Narendra Modi was given a thumping majority in Indian elections, after that he will show magnanimity and extend an olive branch in Kashmir like his predecessor from his own party, Vajpayee. But that doesn't seem to be the case. At this moment, curfew continues for the 24th day. People are still suffering in Kashmir, and then we have seen wherever people come out and fight. We have heard that Indian doctors or Kashmiri doctors are refusing to even give death certificate to people who have been killed by the forces there. And it seems that the morality aspect, the humanity aspect of the entire story is lost. Indian media keeps on jumping up and down, as The Economist said earlier in one of its exposés. But on the other side, international media has shown interest in bringing transparency to this situation in Kashmir, and that they should be complimented for that. Today we are going to talk about various aspects of this matter and where we see a reset. Is there a reset possible, or we are heading to a war? In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by one of my favorite guests, Kamran Yusuf, a senior journalist, focuses on these matters, foreign policy, defense matters as well, and then he is also a columnist. Thank you very much for being part of the program. Next to him is a defense analyst and also a foreign policy analyst, Dr. Talat Shabir sir. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. We are awaiting a third guest the moment they come. I'm going to introduce them as well. Kamran Yusuf Saab, now do you see a possibility of a reset, especially that all of a sudden it seems that Indian Supreme Court has woken up and issued notices, or do you think it is going to be same old, and it is becoming the new normal in India?
I think I doubted that Supreme Court because these are just the preliminary hearings, and the next hearing will be in October.
Yeah.
So that itself shows that if they are really serious, they would have given much earlier date rather than October date.
No, that actually works as the plan B, because in October they are going to have the investor conference. If it blows in their face, then Supreme Court will be there to bail them out.
But let's see, because in the past we have seen, Supreme Court has also gone with the government. One case that I really remember, 2001 Parliament attack, Afzal Guru was handed down a death sentence.
Shameful.
When his case was before the Supreme Court of Pakistan, Supreme Court of India, and Supreme Court, upheld his death sentence merely to satisfy the collective conscience of India. Though they didn't have the evidence. So that shows that the Indian Supreme Court also goes with the public sentiment or nationalist sentiments.
Yeah.
So given their track record, I would be really surprised.
Can I ask you to
sure.
substitute one word with another? You said to satisfy the collective conscience. Can we call it bloodthirst of the people of India?
I mean, you can call it, given the fact, but usually, you can, give the benefit of doubt, give if ordinary people were saying certain things, even on our part, sometimes people really get emotional.
Yeah.
But as a judge, and judges of the highest court, if you also cite, such examples, that shows that how much you are influenced by the public opinion. You are supposed to give your judgments based on whatever evidence that you have. But they are giving evidence because the public sentiment is such. If they have, if they had given, overturned that death sentence, probably they would have faced a lot of public flack. So based on that, I would be really surprised that if the Supreme Court really strikes down, this move by the Indian government. So we have to wait and see, because at the moment, the latest example is, how the somersault, took by Rahul Gandhi, So that also shows, even he realized that the public
Rahul,
sentiment within India is such that he
Rahul
can't
Gandhi,
take a different position.
Rahul Gandhi might be quite instructive, but his example might be quite instructive, but real is Shashi Tharoor's. 1 minute you are actually raising the slogans of rebellion, and all of a sudden Modi, one shouldn't be unfair to Modi.
It is because of the strong public sentiments. They can't
manipulated public sentiment.
Manipulated, or because of the Hindu-dominated sentiment there.
Let me bring in Dr. Talat Shabir. Dr. Saab, especially because we are talking about two scenarios. One within Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir. The second across the LOC. We have heard, we have seen the evidence that across LOC, India has resorted to using cluster bombs as well. Yesterday, one gentleman is 45 and one young kid, actually 3 years old, were killed as a result. Where do you think it is heading? Do you see a possibility of what Sheikh Rashid Saab is actually saying, possibility of a war?
Thank you very much for inviting me to talk about the very important issue of Pakistan today. When we talk of hot LOC these days, because we know post 5 August scenario, there's a lot of firing across LOC going on, and there are many exchanges of fire. Even heavy weapons have been fired on both sides of LOC. So when we talk, I think this was natural. This was to come, because it was expectation by Indian military, as well as we also anticipated the same, because we know that in case, since heightened up emotions on both sides of LOC and atrocities that are being committed in Indian-held Kashmir, so it was very much expected. But currently, in my assessment, I think there is time to expect all-out war. Maybe it's yet to come.
So we are not there yet.
Yeah. Okay. But
can you tell us about the tells or the lines that have to be first crossed? Then you'll see some kind of war.
Yeah, I think we should not, as a peace-loving country, we should
I'm
expect
not
war.
hoping. I'm trying to reassure myself that we are not going for a war.
I think time is running out, because now we expect, when curfew is lifted in Indian-held Kashmir, and we have to see the resistance that Kashmiris can put up to Indian Army and Indian occupying forces. So that will actually drive, or that will dictate as to what is going to happen along line of control. But I think Pakistan needs to be very, very cautious and very, very careful, and these things to be decided with wisdom. Of course, I am for aggressiveness, and I am for very pragmatic assessment of this situation. But we should be ready for the worst time. Anytime in maybe 3 months.
And in 3 months. That is quite interesting. But Kamran Yusuf Saab, regarding the lifting of curfew, we keep on hearing about curfew being lifted. It doesn't seem that that is going to happen very soon. Today I saw a headline from The Hindu, their leading newspaper, and they were saying that perhaps in coming days they'll start releasing the those leaders of Kashmiri political parties who don't pose that kind of threat. They were perhaps talking about People's Conference. But I've spoken to people. I haven't heard that kind of news coming from these sources on ground. What is your take? What is your understanding?
I think, if India is planning to really lift all the restrictions that they have imposed since August 5, the first indication that you pointed out would be that they would certainly release all the pro-Indian politicians like Mehbooba Mufti, Farooq Abdullah, Shah Faisal. So that would be the first indication.
They have done.
Okay.
something
is no
to
indication.
Shah Faisal also.
Okay, so they have
Dragged back to Kashmir
Yes.
from Delhi.
But at the moment, there is no indication that those leaders are going to be released anytime soon.
Right.
So this means that this curfew will continue for some time and could be a possibility for even many
Months?
more weeks and months.
Okay.
The reason is that the situation inside the valley is such. You know, we have seen many reports being coming from Indian occupied Kashmir by the international media, particularly the Western media, and they are saying that people are actually not scared. People are actually angry. There is a volcano inside and ready to erupt. So they are not afraid of number of troops that India, you know, has really deployed in Indian occupied Kashmir. So Indian authorities probably have the better understanding. They know the situation on the ground, that what will happen if they lift the curfew and if there is a huge reaction, if there are protests. Protests are already taking place.
Yeah.
But just imagine if there are no restrictions, tens of thousands of people would come on the streets,
Yeah.
and what kind of spectacle that would be, you know.
Yeah.
That will make a
Today,
huge international story.
Again, we saw a report coming from AFP that actually mentioned certain authorities within Kashmir. They said that so far there have been 500 protests, and Indian media is still reporting that everything is hunky-dory, everything is fine in Kashmir. So, do you think that the cost for Indian government to continue this occupation is increasing or it is declining?
I think it is increasing because the reason is at the moment the only we understand that because of a lot of economic interest and because of India's clout, many countries have somehow or the other given a muted response to whatever India has done in Kashmir. But on the issue of this curfew and restrictions, we have seen even the US has given a statement, even French president has expressed concerns.
Yeah.
So this is one area where India would certainly like to you know, get over with it as soon as possible.
Right.
Because then they can say, look, that this is our internal problem, we have handled it well.
Okay.
So if you know, the curfew remains in place, for example, let's say till September, when you have a Jew and General Assembly session, then there will be more pressure on
Right.
India. So I think for Pakistan's, I think at the moment, we know that we are exercising many options. But I think for Pakistan, the best option is how the people of Kashmir would react. If the reaction is massive, if the reaction is intense, then certainly, you know, Pakistan's hands would be strengthened.
Okay.
You know, their position would be very strong.
That reaction essentially has to be violent, or it can be peaceful, and yet it can create that kind of an impact.
No, but given the kind of anger that we have seen at the moment, despite all the restrictions, I really doubt that those protests would be violence-free.
No, but
there will be a violence.
There are examples. Dharnas in our country, what happened in Sudan, what happened in, especially during the Arab Spring. If that kind of a reaction takes place where people just come together and sit down in the chalks, it might actually create a very interesting kind of dynamic and create pressure.
But we have seen that in Kashmir, that's not the situation. We have used that how Indian forces, you know, used pellet guns and even live arms. So, you know, I really doubt that if there is a massive protest, Indian authorities would just sit back and watch them. I think there will be a real potential of violence.
That's why.
And the violence has already taken place.
That's why when Ilhan Umar actually says that the media curfew or media ban in Kashmir has to be lifted, that makes sense. If you lift that communication ban, then at least you get some measure of transparency what is happening. Right, Dr. Saab? And then you can actually tell whether people are being brutalized or there is a possibility or some space to actually vent anger as well.
Yeah. When we look at the Indian Army's pattern of violence inside Indian held Kashmir, we see that they are all set to deal with the resistance that can be created inside Indian held Kashmir.
Yeah.
I often call it go to hell approach by Indians. They are indifferent to human rights. They are indifferent to various international organizations. They are indifferent to what is happening. For instance, we say United Nations has a stake in the problem, but
Right, sir.
they've said go to hell. We don't bother about it.
Right, sir.
So
I'll have to stop you here. I'm told that Federal Minister for Science and Technology, also the spokesman of Prime Minister of Pakistan, Fawad Chaudhry, has joined us on telephone right now. Fawad Chaudhry Sahab, thank you very much for your time. Do tell us what exactly is the government's reading of situation in occupied Kashmir right now.
Well, we are actually apprehending that when the curfew will be over and Kashmir, there will be some semblance of the normality in Kashmir. There will be huge protests, and what we believe that the situation in Kashmir is going worse day by day. So we are actually very worried about the situation in Kashmir. We are very worried about the human rights situation that is prevailing there. So we are trying to make the world aware. As you know, the diplomatic efforts that have been launched after this action by Prime Minister Modi, we are trying to bring the world attention towards that. And actually, the situation there is not very, I would say, encouraging. Prime Minister Modi is not listening to the word. President Trump requested to lift the curfew and allow human rights restoration there. That has not happened. G7 countries questioned about the human rights. That has not been answered. So right now, I think Prime Minister Modi is not listening to anyone. So when the leadership will not listen to anyone, obviously there will be always a crisis, and the situation is bound to go worse.
Right. Fawad Chaudhry Sahab, this is the moment when usually people, after pushing for actually going for advocacy, start caving in to automatic negative thoughts, perhaps reducing their advocacy. But do you agree with me that this is the moment for make or break moment for Kashmir situation? And right now, it is important for Pakistanis to continue this advocacy all over the world.
No, you're very right. It's a make or break situation for the Kashmir. The steps the Prime Minister Modi has taken has actually brought Kashmir into an international focus after a very long time. I think since Shimla Accord, Kashmir has not been on the front pages of international publications like New York Times, Washington Post, Guardian, Times. So after a very long time, we see the world attention on this issue, and obviously the world is concerned when the two atomic powers are, eyeball to eyeball. The world is concerned about the situation, and I believe the the kind of steps uh, in, the Prime Minister Modi has taken in Kashmir has actually alienated him not only beyond India but even within India. You see, the leadership that is traditionally following the line of Delhi is now even that leadership is behind the bars. So people like Umar Abdullah, Mehboob Mufti, Shah Faisal, uh, these were the people who were actually towing Indian line all their life. But even now, they are behind the bars. And obviously, the other leadership that differed with the daily life in the past, they were already under incarceration. So now there is not a single voice in occupied Kashmir that is actually favoring Prime Minister Modi. And practically the 8 million people living in Indian occupied Kashmir are now have been jailed, and Kashmir has been turned into a huge jail where no person is allowed to come out, no person is allowed to live his normal life. So the situation, I mean, we can, anyone can assess the kind of situation is there.
Fawad Chaudhry Sahab, I need two more answers. One regarding your statement of yesterday when it was stated that Pakistan is mulling over the possibility of closing airspace and land route accessible to India. Do you think that is going to happen in coming days, sir?
Yes, this is going to happen, and Pakistan we are mulling over that. The cabinet has discussed that, and now the relevant authorities are discussing that. The time is obviously something that will be decided by the Prime Minister later on, and he is obviously has the authority to decide the way he wants. But Prime Minister is very clear about it. Prime Minister, as he said in his address to the nation, he made it very clear that be the word be with us or not, we will stand with Kashmiris. So this was a very huge statement on the part of the Prime Minister, I would say. And right now, in my view, Pakistan is standing with the people of Kashmir. We are taking this issue to the world, but at the more importantly, we believe that it's our responsibility to stand with the people of Kashmir, and we are
Right.
doing that.
One last question, sir, regarding what you have just said, our responsibility, our position to stand with the Kashmiri people. It seems that there is a humanitarian crisis unfolding in Kashmir. Regardless of what Indian authorities do, people seem to, they don't seem to have any access to medicines, to food, and basic living, life items. Can Pakistan do something to actually reduce this burden, especially in Syria? If you remember, there was this push for a humanitarian corridor. Can Pakistan at least make this thing possible, that we provide some kind of support or subsistence to the people of Kashmir, sir?
Well, yes, even yesterday this came in the cabinet, and as you know, the Minister for Human Rights has written a detailed letter to all the humanitarian organizations asking them to come forward and help Kashmiris in this hour of the need. So that is also. But as you have rightly pointed out, there is a huge humanitarian crisis that is erupting in Kashmir, and I would say the another issue is issue of genocide and change of demography. Now, Kashmir is not Palestine. In Palestine, the total population was not more than 2 million. In Kashmir, we have 8 million people there. So how will you be able to change the demography? So right now, the real fear is that RSS and the BJP, the Bhajpa, uh, they have a huge force of extremist Hindus. So the problem is if they brought them to the Kashmir and unleash them on the innocent people of Kashmir, it will be a genocide. We will see that the trouble in Kashmir will go up many times, and the humanitarian crisis that you mentioned will have many dimensions. And this is actually the point of worry for us, and this should be the point of worry for the whole world. Because as I said, the Pakistan and India war is not an ordinary war like in Afghanistan or Iraq, where the war will be limited to one country. This war will have its impact on all the capitals of the world. All the major capitals of the world will feel the heat of this war. So the world must be worried, and world is obviously rightly worried.
Right. Fawad Chaudhry Sahab, spokesman of Prime Minister of Pakistan, also Federal Minister, thank you very much for being with us, and thank you very much for your valuable input. Let me come back to the studio. Dr. Saab, I had interjected at that time. So you can comment on what has been said now, or you can resume where you left.
Yeah, right. Well, I was just saying that Modi government is really indifferent to what is happening in Kashmir. Like they acted on August 5, and they meant it. So I think they're kind of ready for what will come as a consequence of what they did on 5 August.
Okay.
Like when we say grave human right crisis occurring in Indian held Kashmir, yes. And it's not occurring from 5 August onward. It is occurring since 1989.
Yeah.
And it's when we go through the statistics of the human rights violation, it's horrendous, and the world has to wake up to it. And of course, that is the issue. I think that this human rights issue is more important than what territory has to offer.
Yeah.
And
But here's the problem now. We can look at what has been happening there since 1989. We can talk about 1948 as well. But the problem is, since we are talking about a trigger which is visible, if you actually go back in time and keep on expanding the problem, people actually just sort of give
Yeah.
up. Instead of that, can we focus on what is happening right now
Yeah.
and somehow to find a solution for the problem?
Right. When we talk of solution, like as Minister Sahab has also said, when you have a grave situation and when curfew is lifted and people come out to resist Indian Army, and there is a war-like situation in Indian Army, definitely will like to quell this kind of insurgency situation. So it is going to create bigger crisis than before.
Yeah.
So are we ready to tackle that crisis? How will we react to what will happen?
Yeah,
in
you're talking about a crisis in Kashmir or some kind of refugee crisis, because that is also a concern.
Refugee that can be also one of the possibilities that
Yeah.
when you the large scale you can expect so far, since Modi government is not being deterred by any of the world communities, any of the world's powers, so you can expect anything from them.
Right. That is important. But something about the timing of the overall situation, especially when you look at the investment conference. It seems, Kamran Yusuf Saab, that the Indian government is trying to gain time. And it seems when you look at the other side, other border of Pakistan, the western border, and the negotiations that are going on, timelines seem to actually converge. That somehow India wants to continue this kind of destabilizing factor till the time Afghanistan's situation becomes clear. And that's why they're doing it, to sabotage the peace process. What is your understanding?
I think this is one of the major reasons, and this has actually also been confirmed by one of the former US ambassadors, Ann Patterson. I heard her radio interview in the US, and she actually, when she was asked about the timing of this announcement by Indian government to revoke the special status, and she suspected that after Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to the United States, which was apparently very successful, and also because of the imminent Afghan peace deal, where Pakistan has once again assumed the center stage, India probably feels left out. And the motive behind revoking Article 370 at this point was primarily to create uncertainty in this part of the region, so that Pakistan should distract from Afghanistan and focus all their energies there, because India probably feels that if there is an Afghan deal brokered by Pakistan, so their advantage is over, because they are and they have been for many years taking advantage of the volatile situation in Afghanistan. So if there is a relative peace, and if there is a government formed, backed by the government and other international players, so India feels that they have absolutely no role in Afghanistan.
Right.
So you are absolutely right that this could be the reason that why at this point they took this decision, because they knew that Pakistan would react. They knew that this would trigger even a possibility of a conflict between Pakistan and India, and this is their best bet to really sabotage the Afghan peace process.
And then certain other things have also happened. All of a sudden, ISIS seems to be coming back to life in Afghanistan. And then there was an explosion in front of Pakistan's consulate. So it all actually points to India's attempts to sabotage it. Do you think that a country that presents itself as the eminent regional power is so devoid of wisdom or foresight that it cannot tell that Taliban or Pakistan are not being empowered? It is basically Zalmay Khalilzad who's being empowered, and tomorrow it might actually help for everybody, work for everybody.
I think that is, the problem is that on this front, we have to say in that sense, that there is a failure on part of Pakistan. Usually, we have fought this war, yet we were also blamed for playing a double game. On the other hand, many other international players have these proxies. And the incidents that you're talking about, there is a possibility that there is a link to the Indian intelligence agencies, that why at this juncture the ISIS already all of a sudden started bombing the civilians and trying to create a chaos. And then what happened in Kashmir. So
and
there is
chief Taliban negotiator's brother is attacked in Pakistan.
But our problem is that such a narrative has rarely got traction in the international world, because if you talk to the powerful countries, the US, probably they won't really listen. In fact, a couple of months back we had interaction with Alice Wells, and this question was asked regarding Pakistan's oft-repeated allegations that India is using Afghan soil,
Yeah.
and she said that we haven't come across any tangible evidence that India is using Afghan soil.
Yeah,
So that is also a problem,
but,
you know. So
let
India
me-
is successfully, you know, using using
Proxies.
this, using proxies because
Yeah, but here's
you know
another
nobody is
thing.
really.
I'm going to
listening.
come to you, Dr. Saab, as well, but one last question before I come to you, sir. Barkha Dutt's this theory, before actually the entire thing happened, when massive buildup was taking place in Kashmir, she was trying to link ISIS's arrival in Kashmir with what is going on elsewhere. And now you see that there seems to be a pattern here. I mean, while ISIS is strengthening in Afghanistan, threatening the US, that even if you cut a deal with Taliban, we will try to sabotage it. On the other side, in Kashmir also, there is a nefarious activity where you want to discredit the freedom fighters by linking them with Daesh.
That is the real, worry, because I personally feel that what India has done in Kashmir on August 5, they have actually laid the ground for a bloody resistance for decades to come. And many Kashmiris, they may not immediately take up arms, it will take time, but in years to come, they will certainly take up arms, they will take revenge, and India, even after 9/11, has to certain extent successfully portrayed the indigenous freedom movement as some kind of war on terror. So there could be a possibility that India is playing a game here. They are trying to suggest that now the issue of Kashmir is not necessarily of the rights of people. It is basically it's a war on terror that is happening anywhere in the world, and probably they are trying to infiltrate so-called ISIS in Kashmir so that they have the license even to kill those who have legitimate and genuine demands. So there could be a possibility.
When Daesh was launched in Indian Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir, the optics were quite interesting. They actually didn't issue their own flag. They attached their flag with Pakistan's. So you give the optics to the world that both are the same thing. But now, sir, if you look at the composition of Afghan Daesh or ISIS or ISK, Islamic State of Khorasan as it is called, you see most of the components are TTP. The guys who used to kill us attacked Pakistan. So doesn't it tell you who is behind it?
Yeah, I think it's very important. This is a ploy that when you say there's a presence of Daesh in an Indian-held Kashmir, so you basically link this with TTP and other elements, and maybe you link, you create a kind of pretext to tackle that situation. The way Kamran Sahab said, that then you can attack all. You can term this whole the indigenous movement that is existing in Kashmir as some kind of terrorist activity against Indian government. So you'll have then pretext to quell it, and you will have a pretext to deal with it with heavy hand. So this is very important, and I think Americans also understand this all game that India is trying to play in Kashmir, and they're very watchful. I've spoken to various American experts on the subject. So they
Experts or intelligence? Or experts?
No, experts. Many professors visit my institute and I discuss. So they are mindful of it. They are aware of it, that this since this because of this entanglement, because of this war, this situation, India and Pakistan, they are daggers drawn, and these are kind of proxies that they create. They play against each other. So it is very important for world to understand that India. This is a ploy by India, and I think the sane people should not buy that, because we as a Pakistan, we should project and this indigenous struggle of Kashmiris at the moment. We have to tell the world that this is very indigenous struggle that Kashmiris are waging in India, and this is their right, and they're fighting for their freedom.
But here's another very interesting aspect, because before India actually carried out what was happening, especially before the elections, we heard many voices talking about the possibility of India and Pakistan working together as maybe one day partners, regional partners or allies. If you remember in 60s, before 60s, Pakistan also had a territorial or boundary dispute with China. The day that was resolved, they became the best of buddies. So this was an argument, but does Afghanistan's situation not actually build this argument that both countries, rather than undermining each other, should be able to cooperate? And that actually brings peace everywhere.
So when you talk of Afghanistan, that we also thought maybe this Afghanistan resolution of Afghan issue is maybe used as a ploy to get some leverages in Kashmir. So we are unsure about Afghan situation at the moment. We have to see where these discussions and dialogue is going on. I don't see any possibility of peace very soon in Afghanistan, because we understand the politics of Afghanistan. There are many factions and they all are opposing each other.
Factions among whom?
Afghan groups. There are Afghan groups.
I thought you were talking about Taliban factions.
No, I'm talking, yes, Taliban too.
No, but here's another dynamic that is very saddening, that during the entire period of US presence here, the warlords have been siphoning off America's money, and now billionaires are surrounding, they're sitting around Kabul,
Yes.
waiting for the US to leave and actually pounce.
Yes.
So in that situation, maybe Taliban's being on the same page with the ruling party or the government will actually help Afghanistan to survive this.
So first of all, we have to see whether they are going to be on board
They are.
with this process.
It seems they are.
But it's uncertain. It's so far it is uncertain, and we don't know where dialogues are going. But we are hopeful that Afghan situation is settling very soon, and it may have some positive impact on Kashmir.
Right. Kamran Yusuf Sahab, one aspect that India keeps on deploying, that somehow Pakistan's diplomatic push to isolate India has failed because the world community hasn't come up with that kind of statement condemning India. But we haven't seen that kind of situation coming in support of India either, with the exception of one Muslim country, I think. Do you think that we should be buying into this propaganda, because India is so deeply entrenched in the international system that Pakistan could not actually even dream of trying to isolate it? What it can do is expose it in through what is going on in Kashmir.
I think there are two ways to look at it.
Yeah.
One, certainly we can argue that how the international community, particularly the individual countries, reacted. And I say that their reaction have so far been muted, except a couple of countries like China or Iran or Turkey. They have come up with more explicit statements. Others were a bit cautious, and that is not something unusual given the fact that how much economic interests many countries have with
Or
India.
the
But then there is-
liberal world order is on the retreat.
Yeah.
So that might be.
And the second aspect is that look at the international press, particularly the Western media.
Amazing, yeah.
Because I've been in this profession for almost 2 decades now. I haven't seen Kashmir has been given that much coverage and extended coverage. 24th day, and still you have seen articles being published by Washington Post, New York Times, Guardian, Telegraph, BBC, and all of them are very critical about Indian policy. And surprisingly, nobody is talking about the oft-repeated Indian allegations that, look, that Pakistan is creating trouble. Everybody is talking about that what India has done, it will backfire, it will have a huge implications. As far as, international countries, the reaction of other countries are concerned, I think that there are two ways to look at it. One, that publicly whatever they said, but I believe that privately, even President Trump, even other countries must be telling the Indian Prime Minister and Indian government that please try to ensure some sort of semblance of peace or normalcy returning to Kashmir. Otherwise, you would be in trouble, because there are two ways of looking
When
at
Indian media actually shows the moment when Donald Trump is saying that Narendra Modi can speak good English, and technically he is taking the mickey out of him, but they are both laughing. They cannot understand, especially the Indian side. And the Indian media is showing it as a thaw between the US and China. That should be a difficult place to realize that you have totally
and they were
destroyed your
portraying as a big victory that, look, Pakistan has been neutralized, but they don't forget that before that, President Trump said that last night that we spoke about Kashmir.
Yeah.
So just imagine that India on one hand says that Kashmir is internal matter, sometimes say that it's a bilateral issue. But if it is a bilateral issue, if it is an internal matter, then why Modi is briefing President Trump? So here is a contradiction.
Yeah.
So everything is not,
If status
all
quo
is not
continues,
well.
Kamran Yusuf, sir, very quickly, both of you, sir. If status quo continues in Kashmir right now, do you think it is going to increase the hardships for India, or it is going to become the new normal? Very quickly.
I think it will create hardships for India if the status quo continues, if the curfew remains in place,
Yeah.
there will be more pressure on India and advantage Pakistan.
Right,
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah, I agree with the Kamran Saab that if it continues with this status quo, Pakistan stands to benefit more than India.
Right. On that positive aspect, I hope that Kashmiris actually benefit from the entire situation eventually. I'm told that we have to conclude the program. Dr. Saab, thank you very much for your time. Kamran Yusuf, always a great pleasure having you in the show. Viewers, you have listened to our participants. Discussion of this sort has to continue because what India is doing in Kashmir and what most of the Indians are now fearing that it might happen in their states as well is quite difficult to ignore. But when you talk about the situation where we are at right now, it seems like there is a parallel or an example available as well. Remember those sit-ins that continued for months in Pakistan, or any kind of civilian protest that continued in the various parts of Arab world too. During those days, there came a time when people thought that it is getting too boring and the world community will lose interest in what is going on. But that didn't happen. The world media, the social media kept on paying attention, and after that, some results, at times some dramatic results were found too. It seems that now in India, Pakistan and Kashmir, similar situation is there. Both countries will keep on waiting, especially Pakistan and the Kashmiris as well, and the world community has to keep its focus, especially the media, on the plight of Kashmiri people. If that continues, we might be able to get something positive out of this situation. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching us. Take care.